Okay, so thank you for being together with the Bacteria Battery Workshop. We are celebrating 10 years since we actually do the Bacteria Battery Workshops, as you saw in this Renewable Lab Symposium video since 2012, and the scientists first showed us how to build, and we were pushing them to do it outside, especially in the pond. Yeah, so, but there are also other interesting sensing technologies in art, so how we can encounter the nature and more than human worlds. And no, the second session is about, also the sensory and acoustic space lab. So artistic interpretations and critical visions also with regards to new Boho. So this will be more for the discussion. Okay, and then a first presentation, very exciting, Irbene Radio, Divinatory interfaces. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Rafa. Hello, everyone. I'm Juan Duarte. I'm doing my doctoral research in Aalto University in the Department of Art, and I've been updating my research recently. Started on this environmental sensing media, so kind of some experiments on translating wind energies into sound and radio phenomena into the audible spectrum. And more recently, I tried to go into, let's say, the phenomena or the specific topic of listening, or let's say in particular, not only human listening, but the machine artificial listening in the case of the concept of deep listening that is Pauline Oliveros working in her composition. And one of these projects that I started more or less recently regarding this kind of environmental listening, it's this called divinatory interfaces. And why is divinatory interfaces? Since I'm working already with media, I think I'm interested in this aspect of decolonization of technology, and to think about other ways to re-enchant technology to go addressing, let's say, non-Western approaches that go in a different way than modernity, linear, progressive way of understanding technology as a way to only move forward, but to discuss perhaps things that were left out. Anybody knows how to get rid of this window? It's really annoying. Maybe like this is fine, yeah. Okay. There's a minus thing, yeah. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, so before starting this project, I was visiting Spain and working on a project, and there was this phenomena of it's called calima, or it's like a wind full of dust, sand, yes, coming from the Sahara. And it's a phenomenon that happens every year, and it goes from the north of Africa to Europe, and of course even goes even further. Now the sky is completely orange and red, I don't know, and it's really moving for days. No, the city is completely colored, and you see these particles of sand everywhere in the city. It was in Madrid, but of course it reaches even Switzerland or Berlin, and this. Some of the particles also go towards the Atlantic Ocean and start reaching North America and some parts of Central America as well. This is a photo of Berlin from the internet during this time. So there is a reflection of solar light producing this kind of coloring because of the kind of mineral particles suspended through the sand. So, and this one is from Mexico that is reaching kind of in a similar way the Saharan wind, no? And so I was interested in this idea of how the wind was becoming a medium itself, a carrier of materials for information as well, no? And in that sense, there is this kind of representation of anemographics that each kind of wind has a name and a personality in a mythological sense. No? And this is, I mean, it's not so old, it's even from the 19th century, so kind of like a pre-modern, pre-scientific, but still there was like an orientation in navigation purposes, but like full of these kind of myths and personalization. No? So I think this topic of the weather as some kind of personal or some kind of human-like behavior has been also permeating or staying in for a long time. Also, so we can understand weather as some kind of like sometimes treating us really well and sometimes treating us really bad, and this kind of paternal understanding we have sometimes about these dynamics, and somehow the personality of the Nordic wind is called Boreas in this kind of narratives is kind of like a temperate cold, whereas the Eurus, where this or also called Sirocco wind, it's rather unpredictable and rather uneasy personality. But this is an image from the myth of Aeolus keeping the winds in the cave in the story of the Iliad. Yes, what's the name? One of these guys was Aulus was keeping the winds, and one of these guys who went to Troy stole the wind, giving his wife to Aulus, and then he could reach Troy by negotiating with these kind of unpredictable forces. But not only, let's say, Western or European narratives are there. No, in Japan there is this personification of a playful wind keeper, and sort of like again having this kind of whimsy personality. Their word, for example, from like Mesoamerican culture, the word hurricane comes from the Mayan. It's called huracan, actually. It's used well, nowadays still not, but hurricanes have different words and different acceptions depending on the place of the world. In Aztec world as well, there is this Ejecatl deity. In these kind of temples, one was found in Mexico, I don't know, like in 1960s during the Olympic Games, when they were digging on the ground, and then they found this temple while they were building the subway. And they found also these kind of instruments next to the wind temple god. So it's you could play the whistle of that next to these temples and get like a rain sound environment playing generated by this relation between the acoustics and the instrument itself. And this, I mean, just a kind of instrument that, of course, that's from the Renaissance or a bit later, even the Aeolian harp. And this guy, Athanasius Kircher, who was making these sort of experiments of making the wind musically present, but it still was having this kind of use of not only as a scientific instrument, but also had a medium or kind of forecasting, in that sense, the understanding how the environment or the atmosphere is behaving in a complex way through arts, through music. And so on. This gives me also a chance to think about the modern science of measuring weather and these anemometers and these sort of instruments to combine different registers of the atmosphere, humidity, temperature, acidity in the water, and so on. How they were like starting to try to create a map and a sense of the environment or a picture of the weather. No. But you couldn't really like have sorry, I go back to the previous one. You couldn't really grab a picture of completeness of the weather if you're just measuring one single place. No, you need to have like a network of these measurements. And it was clear that there's a need for a system that it's standardized and somehow working in ensemble together. So the need for this kind of networks of sensing was kind of materialized also with the telegraph line and this kind of technologies that was connecting different parts of the land, for example, in the USA. And there's an observation of Henry David Thoreau, also very well described by Douglas Kahn in his book of Earth Sound Signal, that the telegraph line, when it was pushed by the wind, was creating a sound like a aeolian telegraph harp in that sense. No, that brings me to well, I mean, also the Henry David Thoreau was this kind of naturalist, was describing the nature, but also in a way, well, describing how the landscape of modernity was transformed, destroying the environment by the technologies of the telegraph line and the train and so on. But this kind of painting picture also described in the book of, or I found it through Duarte's clan. It's called The Song of the Talking Wire, and it shows it's by a French painter who was coming to visit very often the United States during the early 20th century, and he's working mostly on making descriptions of how the Native Americans are disappearing, mostly as kind of like a tribe or group of people who are disappearing. And in this kind of image is also very clear, kind of the theme of the dead. There's a skull, the hunting animals, and we see kind of this clash of ancestral world and modern world. He's holding a gun, and he's listening to the telegraph post. No? We see this kind of like a uncanny landscape of he's trying to make an interpretation of this kind of sonic environment, or perhaps it's all of this at the same time. No? So there's a lot to interpret and ungrab from this image. And I mean, this is one of my works, probably that I'm reflecting on this kind of instrument to create music with the wind, but I don't want to go too much into that right now. So that was the part of the wind that was interesting me in a general sense. And then the other part of the radio, I call it, but not the radio of like human-made radio, but rather the natural radio, which is also kind of like an energy produced by the planet or received as energy, and this kind of northern lights, which can be listened to through the telegraph line in the early development of this technology. And it was connected to, by accident, no, by the assistant of Edison, Thomas Watson, and thinking of this as some kind of communication system with non-human or unearthly beings coming from another space. And this kind of energy was what he was listening, the very long frequency radiation. And these are called whistlers. So you can get them through the day, or especially in the night. There's a interesting phenomena that I really wanted to focus more in this kind of electromagnetic activity from the planet, or coming to the planet, which is called the dawn chorus. And I mean, as you know, probably the dawn chorus, when you wake up in the morning and there's birds singing, announcing the beginning of the day. There's also an electromagnetic effect happening in parallel, not created by birds, of course, but sounds like a chirping of this sort of electroacoustic forces. So in that sense, I connect, now I make another association, which is the electroception of animals, know how animals can sense electricity by I mean, this phenomena of, it's called electroception, and they can orient themselves. They use electricity to find their placement in the north. The birds use them. They have these particles of magnetite in the beak, and then they can find where's the north, and they can travel for long distances to migrate between the north and the south. But not only that, there was, I mean, I can say another thing later, but this kind of behavior of the birds was an interesting thing for me to think about the divination, the act of divination, how humans look at the birds to get answers of what's happening, what is going to happen in the future, or how to imagine possibilities. No? The act of, it's called auguri, or the ornithomancy, so reading the behavior, the singing of the birds, how they fly, and how they eat, to was used in ancient times in Rome to decide on where to create a city or what kind of decisions to take in war times. The image on the right is the foundation of Tenochtitlan, like the current territory of Mexico City. And there was also this narrative, or where the eagle is sitting on a cactus, eating a snake, was the place where the gods decided should be built. So I was thinking what could be a sort of modern way of divination by collecting these items of reading at the birds and these dawn chorus. So combining the non-human capabilities of the birds of sensing the wind and sensing the electromagnetic fields to think about some sort of experiment to play with that. And yeah, maybe just make this kind of quick connection. The towers and the modern satellite or antennas are used as place for contemplation in a way. You know, the towers were the place where you go and see the birds, for example, or you go to see the weather, where you can see how the time is changing. You can contemplate the times. And these modes of contemplation, or this view from the upper sky now, I mean, it's still just translated into this modern technology within probably the same kind of narratives. So just having these elements as thinking about what could be like a way to create a sound device, instrument, installation, perhaps to play with the generative bird sound. I was thinking like a multi-channel space. This is a work of Bernard Leinhart from 1960s to create a space of dynamics of sound moving around. And I was thinking that the birds perhaps can move around through this sort of like a data from the wind, or receiving some kind of information about these senses that birds use in their orientation system. So there is this graphic representations of sound, the cladding figures, which I thought could be maybe also a way to have this kind of ritual, no, in the way of the divination. And I was working in this sort of instruments before, a multi-channel system, in connecting them with weather sensors, but I wanted to revisit this project within the weather sensing devices. So I built these kind of stations to sense wind and transmit over radio what's happening with these kind of energies. And during the, I would like to get rid of this, yeah. During 2 weeks, I was working in this kind of workshop in Matadero in Madrid, and we developed like with the team a first prototype of the system, thinking with these concepts, and I pre-designed this kind of circuit to connect like a multi-channel system, all embedded, to have it as a kind of like all-contained sound device, which you can have play as an interface to create this mediation between radio signals and wind data. And yeah, I would like to show you maybe a fragment of this movie. I don't think I have much time, but I will just show you a bit of that. And I should be able to listen, shouldn't I?
El viento y el electromagnetismo son energías que se expanden a escala planetaria. Interfaces divinatorias de viento y radio se adentra en la detección especulativa y la composición sonora, explorando los vínculos entre el flujo del aire y el electromagnetismo.
Hello? Yes, I'm not echoing. Yeah, so there's this protein called cryptochromes, which color the vision of the birds to find where is the north orientation. So they can actually see like the magnetic fields in a way. So we were wondering how would be the kind of bird point of view, and speculating what could be the sensing through the vision of the birds as well. So I think I'm running out of time, but
Además, las aves pueden ver los campos magnéticos superpuestos a la luz azul. Los criptocromos son proteínas que se encuentran en los ojos de las aves, y además de las aves, también los humanos y otros animales los tienen. Pero aún no sabemos cómo afecta esto a nuestro sentido de la orientación.
and I will go back into this. But I guess, I think I'm over time, so I will rather stop here. And that's it. I think I just want to formulate my question here. I'm thinking, how would be possible? How do you think, how to sense in a different way? That is not the way we think. Now, how to imagine new senses for perceiving our environment. So that's it. Thank you.
Questions? So about your wind project, and you are showing so interesting dimensions and perspectives for how we can perceive what the wind is. And then if we again try to compare to this new visions of this new farmhouse and Green Deal, so then the only thing about wind we usually see are just the wind generators. Do you think that that's so much reduced idea about the wind again as a research? No, maybe yeah. How do you think you could introduce this wind that it also is something bit more different? So how maybe this could be something that artists can do, or what do you think? So become too practical.
I think what I want to explore mostly is this capability of as a medium, see nature as a medium of information as well. So I mean, with this example of the sand dust, it's clear that it's kind of like a carrier of messages in a way, of materials, and also the air that we breathe, is also it comes with a load of information. We were becoming much more aware during the pandemic also of this materialization of the air somehow. So it's important to not just put it in terms of energy sustainability production, but also to think about it in their materiality in other terms, or in informational sense. So maybe.
Thank you. Very